sentencing hearing is underway tonight for a teenager who murdered her 9-year-old neighbor. This is video of
the Missouri teen was sentenced to life in prison Wednesday in the killing of a 9-year-old neighbor girl.
15-year-old mid-Missouri girl, shackled in chains, stared at the floor through much of her arraignment on murder charges today. Fox 2's Betsy Bruce was in Jefferson City inside the courtroom when Alyssa
Bustamante to stand trial as an adult for the stabbing and strangulation murder of Alton on October 21st. It took authorities 2 days to locate the child's body.
Sergeant Rice turns his attention back to the last person to see Elizabeth, the 6-year-old little girl and neighbor who knocked on the door to see if she could play.
For the record.
Alyssa Bustamante.
One more time. Once more. Pull your legs. Come on. Come on, come on. Harder. Calm down. It's over.
Oh my God.
Calm down, okay? Calm down.
What's the time? Does anyone have the time?
3:55 p.m. So heavy. What is it?
A girl.
It's a typical Wednesday night at home for Patty and her 3 kids, Anthony, Stephanie, and the youngest 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton. She was going to be in a play at school, so she was practicing her lines and doing her little songs, and of course, irritating her brother. Patty was getting ready to cook dinner, but that wasn't the case 4 houses down at the Bustamante household. Alyssa Bustamante had a rough childhood. Both of Bustamante's parents were addicts, so she was raised by her grandparents. She was the result of a teenage pregnancy. When Bustamante was born, her father was in prison. Her father was charged with assault. Her grandparents hoped that raising her away from her biological parents would give her a good chance at growing up well. Unfortunately, Bustamante struggled with depression for a large portion of her life. She engaged in self-harm and had attempted to take her own life more than once by the age of 15. Bustamante's grandparents took her to a psychiatrist to get help, and they prescribed her antidepressants. While the medication worked for a while, Bustamante began to show more signs of mental disturbance. On Bustamante's YouTube page, she described her hobbies as cutting herself and killing people. Her friends say that she was a fun person, but that they somewhat kept their distance from her because of her fascination with death.
I was at her party and she kind of just took me off to the side randomly and she's like, you know, I wonder what it would be like to kill somebody, because I guess she was mad at one of her friends there, but it just seemed kind of strange, but you wouldn't logically think one of your friends would kill somebody, you know. So.
And this was at what birthday party? Like what? How old were you?
This year. It was in January.
In January, she came to you and said, "God, I wonder what it'd be like to kill someone." How did you respond?
I just kind of looked at her, you know, and I was like, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yeah." And then she just kind of walked away, and I was like, I thought it was kind of strange, you know, but I didn't think anything of it afterwards.
One of her Twitter messages read, "All I want in life is to find a reason for all this pain." 2 weeks before the murder, Bustamante's prescription was increased. Bustamante dug 2 graves near her house on the night of October 21, 2009. Now let's rewind back to the Elizabeth Alton household. There's a knock at the door. It's a 6-year-old girl who lives across the woods. She had come to ask if Elizabeth can go out and play. Originally, Patty said no because she was getting ready to make dinner. Both girls started hopping up and down and begging and crying, wanting to go play. Finally, after persuasion, Patty was like, okay, you can go for an hour, but she had to be home by 6. Elizabeth could barely hold her excitement. Little did Patty know that would be the last time she would see her sweet little girl. What Patty doesn't know is, although her daughter Elizabeth left with Emma, Emma's half-sister, Alyssa Bustamante, would be the one luring her neighbor into the woods. She told Elizabeth that she had a gift to give her. The little girl would devastatingly find out that this wasn't the case. Back in Elizabeth's household, Patty is starting to get worried. It's getting late. It's October 21st, 2009, and the sun sets at 6:30 p.m. Patty knows her daughter, Elizabeth, will be back on time for dinner because she's deathly scared of the dark. What Patty doesn't know is Alyssa Bustamante has some other gruesome plans for her daughter. Bustamante has just taken a life. She knows now that there's no turning back. She must now head back home and face the music. It's now 6 o'clock, and Elizabeth hadn't made it home yet. Patty starts getting increasingly worried as the dense, deep woods that separate their homes turn into a scary place once night falls. She decides to immediately call her neighbors home. However, they tell Patty Elizabeth is not there. In an interview, Patty says she just knew it wasn't right.
They left together, and the grandmother was telling me she was never there.
That's when Patty decides it's time to call the police.
Everybody up there said she wasn't there, so then they started doing a search. They called in like the fire departments and local officers, and by 10 o'clock there was probably hundreds of people looking for her.
Within 15 minutes, the Cole County Sheriff's Department is on scene. Sheriff's deputies and Patty head over to the last known place Elizabeth was going, her neighbor's house. Everyone said she wasn't there, so then they started doing a search. The fire department, local officers, and by 10 o'clock there were hundreds of people looking for her.
They had several groups of people. They had a command post set up the road.
As Wednesday night slips away, Patty is confused how her 9-year-old just vanished out of nowhere.
They kept telling me there was no signs of foul play. It's like she just vanished. She's 9 years old.
Patty knows that her daughter has a cell phone with her, so she starts calling it non-stop since the disappearance. But all the calls go to voicemail. And then suddenly, dead silence. Her calls were no longer going through. But before that...
Basically, signals generated from the phone to the nearest cell tower. The data is collected and used to zero in on the precise location of a cell phone. And in no time, sheriff deputies start receiving pings from Elizabeth's cell phone. 1, 2, then moments later, a third and final ping from the missing 9-year-old's phone before it appears to go dead. And its location?
The pings from the phone all were located in the general area of the woods. It was a large wooded area behind the house, but it's thick forest ground and it was a lot of area to cover.
Backup was called on the following day and investigative units became involved, and they were contacted to assist in the search. They believed that she was still in the area, and a missing persons report is sent out to neighboring law enforcement agencies and the FBI.
At that point during the investigation, the FBI was involved, Cole County Sheriff's Department was involved, the Missouri State Patrol was involved. There were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 300 volunteers from the community that came together.
They carried out a search of the woods of the area. They had checkpoints set up all around the area for everyone driving into and out of the area. They had tracked down all the local registered sex offenders. They had planes in the air, helicopters, dog teams, dive teams for the ponds and rivers, everything that they could possibly do at the time to try and locate her.
What was it like to see hundreds of people searching for your sister?
Crazy. Like, unbelievable. Like, that many people would come to look for somebody.
It's now Thursday afternoon, 22nd October 2009, and almost 24 hours since anyone has last seen or heard of 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton. Sergeant Rice turns his attention back to the last person to see Elizabeth, the 6-year-old little girl and neighbor who knocked on the door to see if she could play. Her name is Emma, and she lives just a few houses down from Elizabeth. Emma was interviewed by the FBI, and Emma simply stated she was playing with her friend Elizabeth, and about an hour later, Elizabeth started walking home, and that was the last time she saw of her. 6-year-old Emma has suddenly remembered something new, which would be a crucial leading factor in the search for Elizabeth Alton. Emma was outside playing with Elizabeth, and shortly after that became stuck in some thorn bushes and was crying and screaming for help. She was crying for her sister, saying, "Alyssa, come help me." Alyssa Bustamante, as in Emma's 15-year-old half-sister. That's when investigators realized that during the time Elizabeth went missing, all the neighbors' kids are accounted for, except for Alyssa Bustamante. She admitted that she skipped school that day, and she was aware law enforcement couldn't find this girl, but stated that she knew nothing about it whatsoever. During the initial questioning, cops find Alyssa's behavior seemingly calm and forthcoming. They crossed her out and did not consider her a suspect, but a search in the canvas of the woods behind the Bustamante home would lead local volunteers to stumble across something in the backwoods. They had stumbled across a grave in the woods that Alyssa Bustamante had dug up earlier. The investigative team had then started to process the scene and started to think of the possibility that Elizabeth was in that hole, which was in that grave. They had been there for several hours.
It was during that time the FBI had been interviewing Alyssa initially, and they brought her to the scene. And I remember watching 2 FBI agents I know walk a young girl over to the scene.
That's when the sergeant overhears something odd.
I heard Alyssa say she dug the hole. And of course, my response to that was, "Why did you dig the hole?" And Alyssa said, "I just like digging holes," and would bury dead animals when she found them.
Time is of the essence, and time is ticking on this missing person case, now nearing the 48-hour mark. Sergeant Rice is suspicious of this empty hole. He notes it's the perfect size for a small child, just like Elizabeth. Simultaneously, the FBI obtained consent to search the Bustamante home. They end up searching her room. When the agent opened the teenage girl's bedroom, it's a spine-chilling sight. They find several disturbing things. The walls are covered with bizarre writings, some of them in pen, while others appear to be in blood. In one corner of the room, there is a poem called Cutting. Alyssa's best friend, Jennifer, knew about her high school friend's secret. On another wall, there's a crude sketch of a person. The head and arm appear to have slices and slash-style markings. A closer look, and there's a name near the deranged deception, Emma, Alyssa's younger sister. There are also cards and letters taped to Alyssa's bedroom wall from Cesar Bustamante, the return address, prison. FBI agents finds something in Alyssa's bedroom, a diary in her bedroom, a journal. And when the investigator starts to read Alyssa's diary, the words jump off the page for all the wrong reasons. Disturbing things that refer to burning down a house and killing the people in it. And then she noticed that the last entry of the journal had a date, Wednesday, October 21st. The very same day Elizabeth disappeared. It had blue ink markings all over. Blue ink writings were written all over except the last part in which it said, "Now I've got to go to church. LOL." Agent collects the diary as potential evidence. The next morning, Friday, 2 days since Elizabeth went missing, Alyssa is brought to the FBI headquarters for an interview with Sergeant David Rice. Rice hands over Alyssa her diary. The last entry of the diary, which was the day that Elizabeth went missing, was completely scratched out, except for 2 words, slit and throat. As Sergeant Rice tells Alyssa of her diary, there was long pauses in the room. You could see the stress affecting Alyssa, and she began to tremor and her head begins to shake. "We have your diary, and we have read your diary, even the last entry, which was scribbled." And they waited. The effect is almost immediate. Alyssa then begins to tell them what happened to Elizabeth. She tells Sergeant Rice it was an accident. She said they were walking in the woods when Elizabeth fell, hit her head, and suddenly died. When asked if her throat was cut, Alyssa said yes, and that's when her grandmother broke down and began crying. It's a huge break in the case. Alyssa's grandmother leaves the room, and the 15-year-old comes clean. She said she sent Emma, her sister, over to the Alton household to pick Elizabeth up. From that point, she claimed that she told Elizabeth to go back home, and she took Elizabeth by the hand and walked her into the woods. It's a quarter of a mile, 15-minute walk into the woods, leaving plenty of time for Alyssa Bustamante to think about what she is doing. Alyssa stated that once she arrived at the site of the hole, she began to strangle Elizabeth while she was facing her, and then she strangled her multiple times and stabbed her in the chest, maybe around 6 or 7 times, and then cut her throat. After they find the body and the autopsy comes in, Alyssa's entry in her diary reveals her last entry. It reads, "I just bleeping killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. It was amazing. It's pretty enjoyable. I gotta go to church now. LOL." It was premeditated, as she had dug her grave at least 5 days in advance of the murder. Premeditated murder meets the requirement for first-degree murder case. But what about her age? Alyssa is just 15. She was certified to stand trial as an adult. But why did everyone miss the signs A week before she killed Elizabeth, Alyssa takes to her journal and writes, "If I don't talk about it, I bottle it up, and when I do, I explode and someone's gonna die." But perhaps the most telling tale was the warning sign Alyssa gave on her 15th birthday party. She told her friend, "I just wonder what it would be like to kill someone. See the life just drain out of someone. I wonder what it would feel like, that type of power, to take that away from someone." A trial date is finally set. During the sentence hearing, she addresses her victims, family, and states. Alyssa Bustamante was sentenced on the murder charge to life in prison with the chance of parole, plus 30 years for armed criminal action. Under Missouri law, she will serve 35 years and 5 months before she will be eligible for parole. Even her one-time best friend wonders now if that's enough. Following Alyssa's conviction, Elizabeth's mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Alyssa Bustamante, her grandparents, and her siblings. She was awarded $400,000 in a settlement. She also sued Alyssa herself to ensure that the killer teen cannot profit from her crime. No books, no movies, nothing. And that concludes the case of Alyssa Bustamante.